With some of the teams seemingly doing their best to ensure Spurs made their very own Brexit last week at Wembley, a North London derby broke out in Finsbury Park on Sunday, with Tottenham desperate for any sort of positive result to end a barren run. Cue Pochettino to surprise us all. This is your e-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! 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 Tottenham!
Hi guys, welcome back for another hour of Talking Tottenham. Don't forget to subscribe to the show via iTunes or on Acast and get every new episode direct as it's released. We are of course on Twitter and Instagram at e_Spurs and on Facebook e-Spurs page, all one word. We're also across your YouTube, Pinterest and Tumblr. To get hold of the links for all e-Spurs platforms, just go to our website. That's www.espurs.blogspot.co.uk. A big hello to everybody who's listening to us tonight from around the world, especially to Danny Glover at Glovesy007. I'm presuming it's not the Danny Glover from Tampa in Florida. He says he'll be at the Lane for the next game for his first time at the Lane, so enjoy that, Danny. Also to Anthony C. Pepera at Other Anthony. He's from Northwest London. He says, is that worth mentioning? Not very exotic, I know. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's not too bad, although pretty cold tonight. Lord Milder at D_Milder. North Somerset he's in, and Michael Smith at the fan club, who's listening from Manhattan in New York. I'm sure he's got a few other things on his mind tonight in Manhattan, being a busy night over there. But we are, of course, here to talk all things Tottenham. On the e-Spurs podcast tonight, we'll be talking about the North London derby and reviewing the weekend's events, taking your questions for the e-Spurs team on anything and everything Hotspur. Plus, we'll jump forward a few weeks and preview West Ham's visit to the Lane for their annual cup final. I am, of course, though, joined by our regular e-Spurs team. They are Jason, Ricky, John and Ian. How you doing, lads?
Having just got off a flight, but and just trying to acclimatise to it being 2 degrees, not 30 degrees.
Well, listen, Jay, I'm just glad you're back over here, because we spoke last time, didn't we, about the run we went on when you was over here last. And, I mean, you went home to Thailand and they fell apart, mate.
Well, see, I told you I'm back to save the season.
Listen, we're glad to have you back, mate. Just wrap up. Well, it's blooming cold over here. Firstly, we want to say thanks to everybody who's left a review across our social media platforms. Quite a few people in the last few weeks have been leaving us some really nice reviews, and we appreciate every single one of them. So thanks to everybody for leaving those reviews on our social media. All of them get read and passed on to the e-Spurs team. So thanks very much for those. OK, so let's start to pick the bones out of the weekend's game, shall we? Of course, the big North London derby. I think we all went into it with a bit of trepidation after Wembley in midweek, but typical Spurs, they went and surprised us, didn't they? And although they didn't win, let's start with Rick tonight. Although they didn't win, Rick, I think they did us proud out there on Saturday, on Sunday even.
They certainly did, Andy. I think, to be honest with you, I think like we all said during the week, the performance couldn't be any worse. I think we all probably would agree that it's one of the worst performances under Pochettino's reign during the week. So he had a lot to kind of live up to on Sunday, and by all means, I think we did. It was a great performance, and you can't fault the effort and commitment of the lads. Poch obviously kind of threw one and changed the system. It certainly shocked Arsenal in that first 20 minutes, because I think we dominated that spell, and I mean that was our big chance then to really kind of impose ourselves on the game and get a goal early, which obviously never came. But it's great to have a manager that can kind of change a system like he done. And many seem to be surprised that he's done that. I think we look back to Watford last year when we won and he changed the system. And obviously a lot of people will seem to bring up the names of like kind of Guardiola or Conte, whoever changes the system. So it's great to have a manager that does, look at different options. And we do finally, it seems, have a plan B. But on the game itself, I think we've got to say it was a great performance. I think Moussa Dembele, I think we're running out of superlatives for him.
Different class, isn't he?
He's honestly, Andy, the run for the goal, it was shades for me. I said it on Twitter. It's a Ricky Villa-esque run to make up the goal. It was phenomenal. And I think Wenger said they were unlucky to concede the penalty, but he completely outwitted and outclassed Koscielny to win that penalty. And then you look at Harry Kane, who's been out for such a long time. The penalty was put away with such composure. And it's very telling that I think during the week Mourinho came out and he had a right go at Smalling and Shaw for not being at 100% and not putting their bodies on the line for the team. And you look at someone like Harry Kane for us, who for me is the epitome of everything you want a one club man to be. He's clearly not 100% fit, but he put himself at risk for the team. And like I say, he's gone off to England now. Obviously, I think every Spurs fan hopes that he's not going to be called into the team, but I seem to think he will be. But, as a whole, I've got to say, when you look back at the fact that, we went into that game without Alderweireld, without Lamela, without Ali, a half-fit Moussa Dembele, and a half-fit Harry Kane, and we still couldn't be beaten. I think we've got to take away the positives and just say, it was a really, really good performance, and it hopefully will be something to build on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I've got to give Pochettino some credit here, because in the last few weeks I've had a bit of a pop at the guy for being a little bit naive, I think, in some senses with his tactics. But to have the balls to do what he did on a day like Sunday when you're playing a North London derby, I think he deserves every bit of credit he gets for making that decision, because we were all calling for it, weren't we? Be a little bit more flexible, be a little bit more bold, and he did it, and it just worked a treat, didn't it? I think we shut them down. They didn't really have a lot, all right, had a few chances here and there, but you didn't see any of the flowing football that we're used to seeing from that lot down the road, and then just full credit to them. Now, John, I've got to talk about one of the big talking points from the game, of course. Firstly, let's start with their goal. Offside or not offside?
To be honest, without reading the rules of the game, I don't know officially. I mean, it's typical that it'd be them to find that, for it to happen for. Do you know what I mean? Because you know what it's like. How many times they've been like drawing in the 94th minute and they come up with a winner. It's just the kind of like jammy, lucky, horrid people that they are. At the time, I didn't realise. I thought, well, regardless of whether they were standing in offside positions, it didn't touch them anyway. So whatever. But it just the way we bounced back from that, and Vimus particularly, his head didn't drop. He still had a really solid second half, I thought, after that, where he could have gone to pieces. But I would also say that a lot of that had to do with the fact that he had Jan Vertonghen next to him, who was superb. I know Dembele would get all the plaudits, and rightly so, for creating for getting us the penalty. But Vertonghen was awesome on Sunday. He was really, really good, and I think that probably having him next to Wimmer helped him out. But yeah, whether it was offside or not, it was a goal, and we didn't lose. So the only way they could get a goal, they still haven't beaten Pochettino in 5 games now, and the only way they could get a goal is for us to score one for them. So
no, I mean, great performance. And Ian, just looking across the team that played on Sunday, it was clear, wasn't it, right from the get-go, just how much of a difference that Harry Kane makes to our side.
Oh, definitely. I must admit, I thought as he come back too quick, I thought, well, I don't want him to twist that ankle over, but he was back and he was firing on all cylinders. And I think what we've said before on the pod, I hope Janssen watched his movement, because I think we've mentioned it before, his movement's a lot more intelligent and, more in tune for the way we play. Yeah. And I think it'll be good for Janssen to spend some time watching Harry Kane. And as Ricky said, what a composed way to take the penalty. There was nobody else in a white shirt that was ever going to take that. And I must admit, I was sat there watching it with my son in a local hostelry. I must admit, I normally don't watch our penalties, for obvious reasons. And
you should just mention, Ian, that even when you go to the games, you turn around, don't you, when they've got a penalty?
Yes.
At the ground.
Oh yeah, I can't watch it in the ground, and I wait and see what all the people behind me, what their responses are. And but I was so confident that I sat and watched Harry Kane take his penalty. So maybe it's just destroyed that particular voodoo for me. Maybe I should watch them all from now on. I don't know. But in all seriousness, it was great to have him back. And I think the whole team. I think the team sort of like psychologically, subliminally, whatever words you want to flower it up, I think they accepted that he was back, and that encouraged him, and the rest of the team. And I love that stat, with Dembele and Harry Kane. It's just they're just the win double, for our team at the moment.
Yeah, so they are, aren't they? Talisman. As soon as you see them back in the team, the confidence just oozes back into the side from the midfield. They know they've got that target man there that they can play off. Just brilliant to see. And Jay, Ian's mentioned there our penalty. I'm going to ask you to be as neutral as you possibly can about a North London derby here. Was it a penalty?
Wasn't even in doubt. No, I genuinely didn't think it was. I think having read it back since, I think all the pundits and that have discussed it. The Howard Webbs, the Dermot Gallaghers and all that, there doesn't seem to be any real doubt. And in fact, the the intelligent Frenchman that didn't think it was thought it would have been had it been at the other end, which probably tells you everything you need to know. And
yeah.
I tell you what, for an intelligent man, he'd enough speak some absolute garbage, doesn't he? At times, you think,
not a bad loser at all, is he? Not at all.
No. But I mean, just the earlier one you said to John, I don't really have a problem with the goal they scored. The way the offside law is with the interfering and things, I don't think Kevin Wimmer would have still jumped up to try and head it, and the ball's gone in the net. So, I certainly didn't stand there. Again, if I'd have been down the other end, we'd have wanted that to be given as a goal for us. So, I thought theirs was a goal and ours was a penalty.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the referee had a pretty good game, to be fair, didn't he? I think, he was brandishing the yellow cards a little bit earlier on, but all in all, I think fair play to him. He had a really good game in what can be a difficult atmosphere, as we know. And Rick, we mentioned there, Pochettino. Got to give him credit, because none of us really, although we were crying out for it before the game, arguably not one Spurs fan would have predicted that he'd actually go and play three at the back in that game, especially considering what happened to Everton the previous night.
No, exactly, Andy. I think we've all said, during our last pod with regards to Leverkusen, that, we all love Pochettino, but the thing what we're finding is that we are very much struggling that when teams impose their high press on us, how are we going to be able to change a game? Now, what obviously he's done, he's taken a long, hard look at himself and thought, that performance midweek just wasn't good enough. It's not good enough. And fair credit to him, he has changed it. And I have to say, it does take a brave manager to go against their own footballing principles for the team. And it just shows that, he is that little bit less stubborn now, and he's shown the kind of versatility that we've all cried out for. And, I mean, from our perspective, it takes a lot of character for him to trust Kevin Wimmer to bring him into the North London derby. And bearing in mind, we can't go against the fact that Wimmer, not too long ago, had a very, very poor performance against Liverpool. So, again, it is the fact that Poch does put this unreserved trust and faith in young players. And you've got to say, Wimmer, I think, like the boys have touched upon, that after that header, he very much could have crumbled. He stood strong. I thought he had a fantastic second half. And again, I think it's also, from Potter's perspective, taking a calculative gamble when you're playing two left-footed centre-backs in Vertonghen and Wimmer, another left-footer in Eric Dyer in that three, and he's gone with it. And I think, sometimes as a manager, you get your just rewards, and he got that with a point. And I think, listen, we all think we said towards the end of the game, when that cross came in, it was shades of Yunus Kabul, where he looked like he was going to go for it. It could very much have gone in, and could have been a winner. But listen, we'll take a point. And I think what I do want to say also is that when you take into account from our perspective, we've played City, we've played Arsenal, we've played Liverpool. We've only conceded 2 goals. We've taken points off all of them. And I just think if we can kind of battle through to January now, and be right amongst that top pack, I think we're all going to say, I think we're just missing that little bit of spark. And if we can just battle through to January and still be amongst that top pack, I'd love to see Spurs go into that January window and just make, I know it's hard with Levy because you know what he's like, if we can just make a couple of tweaks, there's no reason why we can't be up there for this title, because everyone around us is dropping points. And why can't we be involved in the running?
Yeah, absolutely. We're still up there, It's easy to forget over that bad spell that we had, wasn't it? That we are still undefeated. And although it doesn't, it doesn't mean a lot in terms of the league position, we're still fifth. It's a great stat, isn't it? 11 games now unbeaten, up there with the, the records of Tottenham past. And it's fantastic. Full credit to them. John, do you think there might be a danger we might be seeing 3 at the back again?
Well, I hope we do play like that again. I think it gives, maybe someone like Eriksen and Son a little bit more licence to roam around a little bit more and be a little less rigid in terms of what they do defensively. But I thought it obviously worked, didn't it? I thought, we looked comfortable with it. The players obviously have been practicing it on the training ground. It was, it was just so fluid. Everything worked, and I think it helps that in the way we play, with the 3 at the back, it allows Walker and Rose to have sort of a higher starting position as well, which helps them. Hopefully they're not ragging themselves around as much, possibly. I thought, everyone sort of dealt with it well, and I thought that the midfield, I suppose, I don't know what you call it, axis, double pivot, whatever, of Dembele and Wanyama was just in beast mode on Sunday, and that helped, obviously. But I fear for players like Sissoko and Lamela when they're ready to come back, because where are they going to play? It's just, as Ricky said there, it was brave for Poch to do it and to put Wimmer in. I think it's his first league start of the season, but it works. And if that's a plan B that we can call upon when needed, and maybe match up teams like Chelsea that have started to play it. You know, I'd fancy us to toe-to-toe, player for player, to get, you know, to give a good account of ourselves against a side as good as that. But I think, yeah, we'll definitely see it again, and we do. I imagine we'll see it more away from home, possibly, or with teams that, you know, have got. See, I see it before, and I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but where they got Sanchez up front on his own, you know that them three centre halves are going to be allowed to play. So, and that was the key, really. You know, it's not like they're playing against a big lump, or like against someone like a team like Liverpool where there's runners off the ball constantly. We stifled Arsenal. Sanchez, I'm still not sure if he actually played or not. I don't remember seeing him at all. Yeah, it worked. It worked, and hopefully we'll see it again, because just why not? You know, if that unpredictability helps us to win games and to surprise the opponents, then why not? It's worked once, I'm sure it'll work again, and hopefully, you know, we might see it again against West Ham and we'll get another positive result with it.
And long may it last. And that, I mean, Ian, it could also, couldn't it, be another way to possibly and potentially break down some of these sides that we really struggle to break down? Why not change the formation, throw three at the back and really go for the throat? Because it seems to work, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And also, you know, we talked about Conte, and I think that going, you know, our three at the back, I think is better than Chelsea's. I think that our midfield overall is stronger than Chelsea's, so I think we could see it there. But yeah, definitely, because ultimately, if you're trying to break down teams and you're playing four at the back, then you're never going to get to the situation where you can hit them quick and on the break. Whereas, as John said, if you've moved Rose and Walker a bit further up the pitch, then they've got a higher starting position, and they can join the attack quicker and overwhelm the opponents quicker. So I think that for those teams that set out to stifle and hit on the break, a bit like Leicester did a couple of weeks ago, then I think that it's something that we will see again. You know, and why not? Because ultimately, you know, as Danny Blanchflower said, you've got to go out and win with style and not wait for the other bloke to die of boredom. So, you know, I think we will see it again, and you know, and it will break down those teams that are stubborn in defence.
Yeah, and it's also playing, isn't it, to the strengths of Walker and Rose. You saw them bombing down the flanks again. It's like the days of old, wasn't it? You know, watching our wingers flying down the wing, and it was fantastic to see, because they just couldn't cope at times with our wing back play. It was lovely to watch. And also, Jace, I've got to ask you about a guy who, in recent weeks, has come in for some, I think, fair criticism from the Spurs fans. How did Christian Eriksen do for you on Sunday?
It still wasn't the full-on Christian Eriksen we really want to see, but there was definitely an improvement in his performance. But I think part of that, you know, as I discussed the type of movement that Janssen has the previous week, you know, having Kane back, I think is a help for Eriksen, because suddenly his passes do look just that little bit more creative because of as I say, the whole body movement and the movement that Kane has. So, you know, for me, we saw an improved Eriksen. There's still a long way to go, but it was perhaps a 6.5, 7 out of 10 Christian Eriksen rather than the 4 in previous weeks. And actually, just on the 3 at the back thing, I was pleased that Pochettino came up with something different, but I'm not so sure that had he had everybody available to him, we would have changed the system. I think, you know, it was partly. I think I can't remember if it was Kevin Wimmer or something that I saw a quote from, that they actually only practice it one day before, and it was visible that, you know, one day before we also lost Dele Alli. So without Lamela, without Ali, with no Sissoko to be able to come in and cover, you know, Kane that was only possibly going to be half fit for the game, no Toby. I think, you know, possibly as much as Pochettino came up with a plan, it was a case of needs must rather than being a genuine change of formation that he's thought about a week before the fixture.
It's hard to know, isn't it, whether or not he had it in mind before Wembley, whether or not he was, you know, it made him slightly not desperate, you know, but for want of a better word, about getting a result. It became more important to get a result. But certainly, I mean, it seemed to work. And Vertonghen not been at the same level, arguably, over the last, you know, maybe last season especially. I mean, he's just fantastic, wasn't he? Just blocking everything, you know, throwing everything on the line to block shots, and just fantastic to see. And you think, well, we've got all the world to come back there. It can only bode well for the future, surely.
The thing is with any tactical plan, I don't care what tactics people come up with. you still need players to go out there and do what they're told to do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you could pick 4-4-2 against Barcelona. We could go 3-5-2. We could go 4-2-3-1. And the fact is, Barcelona, with slightly better players, would probably pick their way through whichever system we picked. But I mean, with Leverkusen in the week, with some of the horrendous individual errors that we made all over the pitch. We could have played with 3 at the back against Leverkusen, and with Carl Walker letting balls run across his feet, and Eric Dyer trying to back pass with his head, and you know, there was just so many things wrong, wasn't there? That you know, as I say, with any tactical plan, I don't care what it is, your players have still got to win their individual battles, and they've still got to do what the manager tells them to do. And I think we got that more or less on Sunday.
Huge improvement, wasn't it, on Wednesday? And back to the Spurs that we're more used to seeing this season than last season. I think there are a few concerns that over the last few weeks that maybe they've lost their mojo a little bit, but you know, although they didn't get a win on Sunday, I think most Spurs fans would grab that with both hands, bearing in mind the form we've been in, and it's a nice springboard, isn't it, to go on to the next run of games, which looking a little bit tough, dare I say, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. That's your review for this week. Great point at the library across North London, and of course we move on now to your questions, which you guys have sent in this week for the e-Spurs team. As always, some great questions again, guys, and we want to thank every single one of you for taking the time to send those questions into us. We're going to start this week with Ricky. Ricky, this question is from Fosman at Sean Foster 71. He's talking about one of our former players, Bentaleb. He says 4 goals in 4 games for Schalke. Should Spurs give him another chance?
I think once you've burnt your bridges with this manager, there is no going back. I think you saw very quickly when he came in, he had a plan in terms of who he wanted to keep, who he wanted to move on. It's very, very much Pochettino's squad now. Over the last couple of seasons, you've seen this shift in terms of players that have come and go. And I think he pretty much now has his team. And at the end of the day, if you do question him at all, you're out. And listen, whether that be right or wrong, Bentaleb, I've got to say, I think we've not had a much chance to speak on the pod about him as an individual player. He looked a very good talent. But at the end of the day, if he's not willing to buy into a team philosophy, then there's no place for him at Spurs. And I think you've seen over the last couple of seasons that everything about Tottenham has been about the team, not individuals, regardless of the amount of goals Harry Kane is scoring, regardless of the phenomenal, defence that, Toby Alderweireld has brought into Spurs with Vertonghen. It's never been about one player at this football club. It's always been about a collective team. And therefore, unfortunately, Bentaleb for me doesn't fit into that mould. And you've got to back your manager. And if Poch doesn't see fit that he's right for this club, he has to be moved on. And I do fully expect him to go to Schalke permanently. I think there's already been a deal in place for him to move on in the region of around 17 million euros. So it's still going to be a good deal for Spurs. And at the end of the day, I think you look at our midfield on Sunday, I don't quite see where he would fit in. I don't think he's as good as Dele Alli when he comes back. I don't think he works as hard as what Lamela works when Lamela comes back. And Eriksen, when he's on his day, is also a great footballer. So I don't foresee anyway there'd be a place for Bentaleb in that starting 11. I think he'd be very much a squad player, if there was to be a return, which I don't see likely.
I think that, as you say there quite rightly, Rick, I think that ship has sailed. I don't know who he scored the 4 goals against, but it'd be interesting to know. And maybe it's just a case, and we've seen it with Soldado in our own league, maybe it's just a case of a player being better suited to another league than they are the Premier League. So we shall see. But there's your answer, Fosman. Hope that answers your question. Next question goes to John from Jay at Menam J. This is for you, John. Nice little question, this one. He asks, do you say or do anything superstitious before or during a game? And I ask you in particular, John, because I know before the games you're a...
How long have we got? Seriously. I do have a lot of superstitions. I mean, I'm always one of these people, every day of the week, my left sock goes on first. And I don't know why that is. I've got no idea. But on a match day, I'm a bit of a nightmare, I must admit. Anyone who's ever travelled with me to a game will probably agree. I have to travel backwards on the train.
Love it.
If my equilibrium gets disturbed, I'll blame the result. So yeah, I have to travel backwards. Then I'll always go and find the lovely gentleman from the help me out here, lad. Salvation Army, on the high road, and I'll always put money in his pocket and in his pot and shake his hand. And when we get in the ground, I'll put a chewing gum in my mouth straight away as the game kicks off, and I've got several tattoos on my arm, which I have to kiss. I know it's stupid, but I have to do it. Otherwise, if anything goes wrong, I'm blaming myself. And I've also got a cockerel pendant around my neck, which I will put in my mouth occasionally to. That normally brings us luck.
See, it's a strange thing, isn't it? Do you know what? I sit there, if I'm at a game, I sit there with my arms crossed. And if we concede a goal, it's because I've crossed my arms. I've moved, or I've crossed my legs. It's such a strong thing, isn't it? Superstition. Jay, have you got any superstitions we should know about?
As time's gone on, I think the only thing I did do on Sunday was I thought if we're to have a good game, it'll be through Hugo. So I made sure I wore me Lloris shirt. But no, not too many to worry about. No.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? I know a lot of footballers. I think Gary Lineker was one of them. Paul Ince was another one. Some footballers don't put their shirt on until they leave the tunnel. Some, go through their own rituals of tying their boots up in a certain order. And Rick, any for you?
I used to, when I was younger, think to myself, I've got to go to the toilet before the game or after, can't go during the middle of the game. I was always convinced that if I went during the middle of the game, the opposition would score.
And it'd be your fault for going to the toilet.
Always be my fault. And obviously, back in the 90s, you think how many times Spurs used to concede? I'd be standing in that toilet all afternoon.
Love it. And Ian, just finally on this one?
We've already discussed my aversion to penalties. The other one is I used to, a bit like Jace, I'd always have to wear the same things week in, week out, and many a heated discussion I'd have with my wife when she told me that I hadn't put the stuff in the washing the week before had caused some consternation in the Gunn household. But outside of that, I'm as I said, I'm pretty much, penalties and clothes, and that's about it, really.
Yeah, there is a couple of others I've just thought of as I'm listening there. I also had Fox on my shirt during the 90s on the back of the old pony shirt. And as soon as I got Fox on the back of my shirt, he left. I then got Sheringham and he proceeded to leave Spurs. So that was my fault also for get it on the back of my shirt. So we're a strange old bunch of football fans, aren't we? Superstitious lot. Great question, Jay. And don't forget, guys, if you're listening to the podcast, you've got some superstitions, some different superstitions that we should know about. Let us know at @E_Spurs. Use hashtag #eSpursPod. Great question. Next question is from JD at Fraud Sissoko. He asks, what do you feel Lamela brings to the team when he plays?
Well, I think that, the first time we saw Lamela, he looked a bit lightweight. He looked a little bit sort of out of his depth in the Premier League, having come from the Italian league. And I think he's gone away, he's got fit, he's worked hard. And what I see is a man totally committed to the Pochettino philosophy, who always gives 110%. He can't tackle to save his life. Sometimes I look at those tackles and I just close my eyes and wince, because you think at some stage one of them is going to connect and he's going to be off. But outside of that, no, a man who works really hard for the team, and someone that has got some flair in him. When he wants to turn it on, it's just I just think at some stage, we still haven't seen the best of him, have we?
Does he score or create enough for you, mate?
He doesn't score enough, that's for sure. Although when it comes to creating, I always remember that lovely little ball through the legs for Eriksen at the Etihad last year. Yeah. When he'd come on as sub, but he could create more, and he could definitely score more. If we all do the thing that we always say to each other that we shouldn't do, and we look at some of his old clips of his days in Serie A when he used to cut inside on his left and curl it in. I think we've only ever seen that once or twice in a Spurs shirt. So I'd like to see a bit more of that, please, Eric. Thank you.
He seemed to bang the goals in on YouTube, didn't he, at Roma? And as they say, don't ever watch the YouTube clips. But no, he's certainly improved as a player, I think, at Spurs under Pochettino, which is credit to him. Works hard, works tirelessly, bit clumsy in the tackle, as you say there. But I think at the moment, because of that huge dip he had the first few years. I think he's just about par at the moment. Still room for improvement, but I think if anyone can get the best out of him, it's got to be his countrymen in the dugout. So we shall see. Great question again. Thanks for sending that in to us. Last question of the night for this podcast goes to Jay. It is from Eric Heimdall at Eric Heimdall 100. He asked, who's been our best player so far this season and he mentioned specifically without picking Wanyama. I suppose he thinks Wanyama, but it's down to you, Jay.
Well, that's a difficult one because so few of them have played every game, isn't it? We've pretty much had a disrupted side from the start, and it's interesting. When we were taking a little bit of flack last week about lack of squad depth, perhaps there's a lack of different type of player. But I look at the side and think it started off the season with Hugo going off after 10 minutes, and since then we've had Dyer out for games, we've had Kane out for games, we've had Toby out for games, Dembele suspended for 4. Lamella's been out, and now Ali's out. Rose has been out. Kyle Walker went off Sunday. He also went off in the Liverpool game, didn't he? So, it's been very difficult for any of them to get into a real rhythm of games, with the exception perhaps of Wanyama and Jan Vertonghen. But I think overall, our two fullbacks, with the exception of the game against Leverkusen, I think both Walker and Danny Rose have had excellent starts to the season as well. And Jan was really shaky on that first game at Everton, but I think Jan over the since that first couple of games has been exceptional as well. He played really well in the Manchester City game, so it wasn't just the North London derbies played well in, but perhaps the standout players are the ones that have been able to get a real regular run, and that's always the key for me, isn't it? That's why Chadley looks a better player since he's left. To go back to the Bentaleb question, that may be why he looks a better player now he's in Germany, because it's just that regular run of football. And Son comes into the team, gets a regular run at football, and we see the better side of Son, don't we, as well? So, and perhaps poor old Jansen's struggled in that respect because he's been in and out of the side as well with Kane's injury, and then sometimes playing with Son as a striker, not Jansen. So that's the problem and the benefit of getting regular game time.
Why is it, do you think, that we've been so unfortunate, if you like, with injuries this season? Because if you look at last season, Jay, we went through the entire season pretty much untouched, didn't we? We were sweating over Kane getting injured because of the lack of an option there. We was fine with that. And it's hard to think of any other long-termers that we had out last season, whereas this season, they seem to be, dropping like flies at the moment, don't they? So would you put that down to bad luck, or is there more to it?
I think the vast majority is down to bad luck. I mean, Harry gets you can't do anything about a twisted ankle. I think, if you look at it, Arsenal get a lot of criticism for their injury situation because a lot of their injuries are very much the same, aren't they? They're very much muscle related too. And then they tend to bring players back, and the player continuously breaks down. And it's interesting to see Mourinho talking about players playing through the pain barrier at Manchester United this weekend. Whereas I think most of Tottenham's have tended to be impact-type injuries, and that purely is down to luck. But then, the key thing then when you have got players out injured is that we don't tend to rush them back too quickly. And, there was lots of people, weren't they, talking about Kane, or he might get a little spell on the bench against Leicester, or certainly on the bench against Leverkusen, but Pochettino obviously thought, no, I've got the comeback date in his mind, and part of that is I don't want them to break down further on. And let's just fingers crossed that this international break we don't get the problems that we had in the last one when Rose got injured and Dembele got another foot injury, didn't he, with Belgium, I think, on that trip as well. So fingers crossed they all come back healthy after this one. In
some ways, I guess it might be a good thing that Harry Kane's going away with England. You think we haven't got a game for a couple of weeks now, gets him match fit, closer to that level of match fitness, doesn't it? Bearing in mind West Ham in a couple of weeks, so maybe that's to our advantage.
Yeah, I thought he did really well Sunday for the 70 minutes. I didn't think he looked like he'd been out as long as he did, but for sure, get 90 minutes under him. Hopefully, maybe the Scotland game, I think, is obviously the one that Southgate needs to win more than the Spanish friendly. And the Spanish friendly, you probably won't get too much of the ball the way they play. So perhaps get Kane a good 70, 80 minutes under his belt against Scotland. Hopefully he scores. and then you haven't got to worry too much about the Spanish game. And don't forget, with Kane, as bad a form as people seem to think he's been in, what's that now, 3 of his last 4 Premier League games?
Yeah.
3 and 4 doesn't look too bad, does it?
Certainly
All
doesn't.
of a sudden.
Certainly doesn't. And we're great at penalties, if nothing else, aren't we? Thank goodness for that. Certainly score a penalty our side. Much improved, and great to see Harry Kane back on Sunday. Okay, guys, that's your questions for this week. I hope we've answered everything that you guys wanted answered on this week's podcast. And don't forget to get your questions in for next week at e_Spurs on the Twitter and e-Spurs page on the Facebook. Give us a like on there, a follow on the Twitter, and use the hashtag eSpursPod if you've got a question for the lads for this time next week. We'll do our very best to get those answered for you. We're going to move on now. Of course, we haven't got a game for a couple of weeks, so what we're going to do is look ahead to the next couple of fixtures. I'm just going to read out the fixture list for the next month or so, and I think it's fair to say that it's going to be a testing month before Christmas coming up. We've got West Ham at home, of course, the weekend after next. Monaco on the 22nd of November, then got Chelsea. We then face Swansea City. Thank goodness for Swansea City. We then face Moscow in the final game of the Champions League, followed by Manchester United away at Old Trafford. So, Ricky, if we wanted to have our side tested to see whereabouts we're at, then they're certainly going to get that in the next few weeks.
They are indeed, Andy. And to be fair, like I say, I think the big games, like I said earlier, we haven't particularly struggled in terms of picking up points. It's just trying to turn these draws into wins. I think we've all very well here spoke about, it's great to have this unbeaten run. But at the same time, it's really important we try and maximise our points. I was just having a look at last season's start compared to this season, and we're still a point ahead. We're not even yet to have the opportunity to have Kane, Ali, Dembele, Rose, Lamela, Toby actually in the same team yet, and we're still unbeaten, And those players are key to us. It is a spine of our team. So we actually haven't had a chance yet to field what, in my opinion, is our best 11. And I think the West Ham game is a perfect game for us in a way, because we're looking for a big game at home to really get the crowd behind the team. We need to get back to winning ways as soon as possible. Obviously, we demolished them last year. And I don't see West Ham coming to Spurs looking to play for a point. I think they want to come to the game because, like we've said a lot of times, it is their cup final. So they love to come to Spurs with an idea of trying to win it. So I think that may well play into our hands as such, and we won't get this kind of game like we had with Leicester, where it's pretty much one chance you've got to score, and if you do give away a chance, the other team will score, and that's pretty much it. I do think we're going to see an open kind of game, which will no doubt play into our hands. Yeah, it's going to be a testing tough period, but it's really going to tell us about the character of our side, I think, especially because of the last few weeks and the slight dip in form over the last few weeks. And John, of course, we keep banging on about this great undefeated record that we've got this season. How important do you think that is? Is it more important than just great stats on a bit of paper? Is it psychological as well, do you think?
Well, I think it's done all of us a favour, because none of us have had to walk into work on a Monday morning and get any stick. So I know it's a cliche, but if you can't win, just don't lose. Yeah, and that's what we've been good at. I mean, if you think we've been any team would struggle without the Golden Boot winner in their side. So to come through a period where Harry Kane has not been there, and we're unbeaten, I think it's good. We've all seen under previous managers and previous regimes, we would have crumbled badly missing our best player. Yeah. I know we've struggled in a lot of the games, to be fair. We've not been as attractive to watch, and we've played in a different kind of way with Kane not there. And me speaking personally, I certainly felt, as soon as I saw that team was announced on Sunday, regardless of the fact that it's a change of formation or Toby's not playing, as soon as I saw number 10, Harry Kane, I was like, do you know what? We've got a chance today. Yeah. And if we feel like that as a fan base, I'm sure I'm not the only one who was lifted instantly by seeing Kane on the team sheet. The players must be like, right, we've got him back now, and let's crack on with him. And it's really testament to Pochettino, I think, and the squad, that we've had all these injuries that Jason just listed off, that whole reel of players there, and we're still unbeaten. I think it's quite amazing, really. But we do need now to turn some of them draws into wins, and as long as we do get more wins than draws and losses, obviously, between now and the end of this year, I think, come New Year's Day or the 2nd, whenever it is we play, we'll be in a good position, and I still think we'll be there or thereabouts in regards to the top 3, top 4. It's a good thing. It is a good thing. It certainly seems it. And Ian, of course, I've just listed off
the next, 6 or 7 fixtures there, the likes of Manchester United, Chelsea, West Ham, Monaco, all still to come. Can we get through till, let's say, Christmas, do you think, with this undefeated record intact?
I think that the teams we're playing suit us because they'll all come and they'll want to play their game against us, and their game isn't, parking the bus and causing us issues trying to get through them like we discussed earlier. So all of those teams, Chelsea, even West Ham, Manchester United, Monaco, Moscow, they'll all want to have a go. It's the Swanseas that concern me, just from the fact that they will, they're fighting for their lives, and they'll do the classic park the bus and hit us on the break. Now, I think that the run can continue, but like John's just said, I want us to start now converting some of these draws into 3 point.
Yeah. Because,
I feel that, we're only, a couple of weeks ago, if we win today, we go top. If we win against West Ham, we're, 4 or 5 points behind now we don't want to lose ground, to lose touch with those teams that are at the top, because at some stage I want us to be top. Maybe I'm being a bit naive and a bit rose glasses for Spurs, but it's those games against the Chelseas and the Manchester Uniteds that we need to start picking up the points over.
And a lot of those games coming up, looking at the list, are away from home, especially against the bigger clubs, if you like. Still class Manchester United as a bigger club, but Manchester United, Chelsea, of course, are away from home, and that's going to be a real test. I know at Old Trafford in recent years we've got a good record up there, haven't we? Started to pick up a few wins, but it's going to be a real tough. They're going to be fighting for their life, of course. Mourinho's certainly going to be fighting for his life, if nothing else. So it's going to be a tricky one. Jay, I want to ask you this. Has your ambitions or your predictions for Spurs changed now from the predictions that you made at the start of the season?
No, not at all. I still think we've got I never said we'd win it at the start of the season. I said what I was looking for us to do was get to April in the race. And I still think that's very much the case. But that the Chelsea game, in terms of, I think what we'll find out over the course of the next month or so is whether we're title challengers or whether we're top 4 challengers. And there's a big difference between the two. I mean, that Chelsea game, they're now 5 clear of us, aren't they, Chelsea?
Yeah, 5, yeah.
5 points clear. So you go there and lose, and that's 8 points. And then it becomes, you start to think, no, it's going to be hard work, because we, at the end of the day, we were 7 behind Leicester last year and couldn't pull it back. And Chelsea, a full-on Chelsea, are a lot better than a full-on Leicester were. So, I certainly don't think we want to go 8 points behind Chelsea. And, of course, the impact of that Monaco game, that's also big, because I think Tottenham really do want to. I think he'll want to send his absolute strongest team out for that Monaco game. And, of course, that's the week that Chelsea won't be playing any European football. And whilst another famous podcaster talks about Chelsea benefiting from not being in the Europa League, they benefit from not being in the European football, like Liverpool benefit from not being caught up in European football this week. So, it's no surprise to see, none of the 4 sides that played Champions League football this week won at the weekend, but the 2 that completely had 3 weeks scored 5 and 6 between them. So that, it's not just the Thursday night problem. We've said it before. It can be a problem Wednesday nights as well, and the Tuesday nights with the high intensity Champions League games. So I think that's the biggest danger game I can see coming up, that Chelsea away game. And of course we all know the emotions that could be there that day, and I think it'll be even more highly charged than the derby was Sunday.
Got some cracking atmospheres to come. We've got that game, the cup final, of course, at the Lane in a couple of weeks, when they come to our ground. And Rick, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it, to know what sort of side we're going to play when it's sort of a couple of weeks away yet. But you would think, if we want to do anything this season, West Ham they're not the best side at the moment, are they? They're struggling themselves. So you would think, if we want to do anything this season, we've got to get a win.
Indeed, yeah, we need to get that get back on the winning run, if you like. I mean, I think West Ham's form recently hasn't been too bad. They won 4 in a row up until the Stoke game, obviously, and they drew. So they're a tough side. And West Ham, I hate to say it, they've improved a lot now away from home. They're not, the softies they used to be. And I think Bilic has made them into a very, very good side away from home. And you've got to say players like Mikel Antonio, I think people forget last year they was without Payet. And Payet is so crucial to their play, and obviously it looks like he will most likely be fit. So that gives us another kind of question mark to have to work against. They'll be a dangerous side, West Ham. It's a game that it won't be easy for us, but I do think it's going to play, like I said, into our hands, that they are going to come to Spurs looking to actually impose themselves on the game, as opposed to sitting there parking a bus and, playing for a point. I do think they'll come at us, which hopefully will mean we can then put our game over to them. And I would like to think, we'll have the likes of Harry Kane back, fully fit, hopefully, Ali, Lamela, Toby. So you're looking at a completely different Spurs side once these players are involved. So it really is crucial for us that we get back on that winning trail, because, like you've mentioned there, Andy, some key games coming up. So if we can, like I say, get through to Christmas, still unbeaten, go into that January window where we're still amongst that top clutch of clubs, then I would just like to see that ambition from Daniel Levy to kind of go there and put a couple of more million on a couple of these players. Because for me, I think we touched upon it. Eriksen, a lot of people said his performance improved at the weekend. I think he played okay. Again, he was fairly anonymous for me. I don't think he imposed himself on the game as much as what Christian Eriksen we know and he can. He got 6 assists last year. 18 assists, I think, last year and 6 goals. So we're talking about a player that has got so much potential there, and we just want to fill it. And I think when I look back at, Match of the Day 2 the other night, and I watched Sadio Mane play, and I hate to say it, I know I'm calling it very, very early here about Sissoko, but when you think, I think Mane cost 26 million, and allegedly we thought that 30, on Sissoko, it's frightening in a way, because I think if we look at our team, I think if we could just have that kind of alternative for us, what Mane brings to Liverpool in terms of the darting runs forward. If we could just find that kind of alternative player, I don't think we're far away from Tool, being right up there and being involved in the title race. So it's about showing the right ambition at the right times, and that's what we've spoken about on the pod before about Daniel Levy, showing the ambition at the right times. I think a lot of it is going to depend on really where we stand in terms of whether it will be Champions League or whether we're going to dip into the Europa League. I think that will be key. I mean, the Monaco game is going to come at a time when we've got some big fixtures on, and I think we know our stance now, where we're going to have to go and win at home. I say at home at Wembley against Moscow, which I still don't think will be easy. I think we're going to have to come to terms with Wembley. I know it's probably not the right pod to discuss it, but next season it looks like we're going to have to play all our games at Wembley, and it is something we're going to have to overcome. So, just in general, I think we've got to find a way of managing that. And, from a team perspective as a squad, if we can just, tweak a couple of key areas, there's no reason why we haven't got the chance to be right involved in this title race.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you make a great point there about Wembley. And I think the big thing for next season, something I think that I've learned, and the big thing for me is how much it's lifted the opposition players. And you think we've got 19 games there next season. Every single one of those sides, it'd be like a cup final for them, not because they're playing us, but because they're playing at the home of arguably the most famous, football stadium in the world. So that's going to be a real test. And I think next season is going to be a real interesting one. I don't think a prediction for where we finish next season is going to be an easy one because of the Wembley factor. I don't know if it's too late to change the agreement now, but I think it's taught us a lot playing there. Be interesting to see. See what I want to do, lads, to finish up on the podcast this week. I want to go across the board. Normally we get a prediction from the guys, but we had a great question sent in to us earlier that Jay answered for us, and that was, who is your player of the season, Spurs player of the season so far? So let's do that across the board, shall we, to finish up on the podcast this week. Let's start with John. Who's your Spurs man of the season thus far?
Well, I know the question earlier was to Jason was you can't say Wanyama, but for me, I think if I'm not allowed to say Wanyama, then I'd say, I know it's a bit boring, but as a collective, I think everyone's pulled their socks up and done when they've needed to, apart from the odd occasion. Obviously Sissoko against Leverkusen was poor, wasn't he? But I think, the amount of injuries and stuff we've had to cope with, I think the squad has coped admirably so far. So I'd say Wanyama, but as I'm not allowed to, I'd say everyone's played their part this season, and it's a very, very good squad we've got there. So I'm going to say everyone.
And Mr. Gunn?
I'm with Jason and John. If I'm not allowed to say our victor, I'm going to go for Vertonghen. I think that he's slowly upped it, and he's kept our defence, together. When his mate's not been there through injury. So, I want to go for Jan.
Certainly had a great game, didn't he, on Sunday in the North London derby, throwing himself at everything, as we say earlier. Jay, I know you gave us an answer earlier on, but just to confirm, your Spurs player of the season?
I think if I had to really pick one, it would be, as Ian just said, Jan as well, because he's always looked so good alongside Toby. Now we're seeing him without Toby being alongside him. He's also had changes the other side of him with Davis playing games and Danny Rose playing games. And he played one game, didn't he, at left back himself.
Yep.
So I think considering the disruption in the back line either side of him and also in one game to himself, I think his performance is overall, with the exception of that, particularly that first half at Everton. After that, I think he's been back to his best.
Certainly has. Fantastic to see him back playing at that level again. And Ricky, to finish up.
Oh, I've got to say, I think Danny Rose. Do you know what? I've got to
Great
say,
shout,
I don't think I've ever been so wrong about a footballer, and I'll hold my hands up. When Danny Rose came through, I was one of the first to get on his back, and it just shows you how wrong you can be. Because for me now, I've got to say, I was speaking to this today with a chap who I work with, and I've got to say that I think he has turned himself into not one of the best left-backs in the league, but arguably in Europe. I know that's probably a massive statement to make, but I don't think I would pick many players over him. The couple of defensive tackles he made against Arsenal, there was a double tackle he made, and quite frankly, if that was someone like Ledley King, we'd be drooling over it at the time. And Danny Rose, for me, from where he came from, when you've got to bear in mind that he started off as a left midfielder, and I've got to give maybe Harry Redknapp a bit of credit. He said to him, this guy will be a cracking left back, and he called it very early on. And for me, Danny Rose, I've got to say, I can't believe the transformation of a footballer. He is absolutely phenomenal, and it just seems like he wants to be the same as Harry Kane, wants to stay at Spurs, wants to play with us, and I've got to say, Pochettino now has not only developed him defensively, but even attacking. He's just a formidable fullback. He's been absolutely amazing. And also just a word on Vertonghen, even though I'm going to say Danny Rose, I think Vertonghen has shown, recently, a lot of us have kind of always felt that Toby, in a way, has made Vertonghen look a better defender. But I think it's just shown over this last few weeks without Alderweireld being there that I really have to say Vertonghen has really pulled his socks up. He's been phenomenal and he's led that defensive line brilliant. But as a whole, I've got to say Danny Rose, he's been amazing. Certainly has. And there's no doubt in my mind that we have got on their day the best fullback pairing in the Premier League. No doubt whatsoever that on their day they are the best in the league. Just got to keep that consistency up, haven't they? And I'm sure great things will come if they can do that. And I'm going to say Hugo Lloris in goal. I think the save he made against Leverkusen, arguably the best save that I've seen in my lifetime. He had no right whatsoever to get to that ball. And there's 3 or 4 others that I think if he doesn't make those saves, we lose the game. And that's arguably our record would have gone. Not only that, you're talking maybe 4 or 5 points less than we have now. So for that reason, I've got to go for Lloris. I think he's the best goalkeeper that I've seen in a long, long time. I think he makes saves nobody else can make. I just wish he could kick a ball. But no, I joke. He's a top notch, and we're so lucky to have him. And for that reason, I'll go for Hugo. So there you have it, guys. That's the e-Spurs team's man of the season thus far. I hope we've answered all of your questions that you had out there this week. And don't forget to get involved in the show each and every week via Twitter and Facebook. They are once more e_Spurs on the Twitter and e-Spurs page on the Facebook. And thanks again for leaving reviews that you have done across our social media. We appreciate every single one of those, guys. We really do. That's it for the podcast this week. We'll be back next week to have a look at the West Ham game coming up and to cover all of the Spurs news that happens in between. On behalf of Jason, John, Ricky, Ian and myself, have a great week, guys. And as always, come on you Spurs.